And here comes Charlton. Oh, a great goal!
Wesson picked up that kid flick. Driven wide. Yes!
In 3 decades at Manchester United, Sir Matt Busby led his club from relative obscurity to greatness.
He had a presence, Matt Busby. He was a big man and he had an aura about him. And when people talked about the boss, or when he came into the dressing room, everybody sort of, you know, were aware of the power that he had.
His stature transcended football. A revered national figure, he seems to embody noble human values of the past.
I always had the upbringing to do the right thing, to try and do the right thing. And overall, things went out very well for me.
But in professional football, doing well and doing the right thing were not always the same. And for Busby, a football man, success came first.
The boss was successful because the only thing that mattered was Manchester United as a football club.
Matt Busby was born in 1909 in Bells Hill, a mining town near Glasgow. When he was only 6, his father died, and for 4 teenage years Busby worked in the mines. The Busbys were Catholics in a community split by sectarian divide. At 17, he met Jean, his future wife, in a marriage which would sustain for 50 years. Football was the only recreation, played with almost desperate passion. Busby loved the game and saw it as his one chance of escape. He attained his dream at 19, signed as a professional by Manchester City.
Now here are Jimmy McLachlan, Busby and Bray.
But he was soon disillusioned. Football was a harsh business. Players were restricted to a maximum wage. Clubs could stop players moving even when their contracts had expired. It was hard and insecure, but with Jean's support, Busby kept going. After 2 grim years, Busby established himself by a move from attack to midfield. From there, his thoughtful passing graced the 1934 Cup final.
So after 30 years, the English Cup returns to Manchester. I lad, it's been to London for that weekend, and it's back in Lancashire again now. Over 1 million people greeted the team, and of course, couldn't know.
Busby enjoyed his first taste of success and was determined to secure his place in professional football. War interrupted many football careers, but Busby's playing days were nearly over. His 6 years as an Army PT instructor gave him valuable experience managing others. In 1945, Busby signed a 3-year contract to manage Manchester United. They were Manchester's lesser club, their Old Trafford ground bombed and near derelict. Faced with a formidable job, he immediately revealed an ability to spot talent, appointing a coach, Jimmy Murphy. They had 2 assets, an established youth policy and strong first team.
Guiding United is ex-star Matt Busby, keeping a player's eye on the first team workout. How many Manchester races can you pick out? Among these are Mitten, Warner, Pearson, Chiltern, Delaney and
Busby had big plans, but he was still restricted by the Football Association to paying players a maximum wage, then £8 a week.
Trying to make us the #1 club.
But at the same time, it wasn't very good for the players. They were missing the
Financial setup.
financial side.
I never opened my wage packet, giving it to my wife, because I knew what it was inside. It wasn't much.
Busby was feeling his way into management.
He was a rookie manager, learning the trade.
He never coached. I never saw him coaching anybody at all. And he never said to, as true as I sit here, he never said once to me anything about improving my play outside left. And I always wished I had somebody that could read the game for me, tell me what I was doing wrong.
And 100,000 spectators settle themselves for an afternoon's enjoyment as the King greets the players with a friendly handshake. Charlie Mitten, number 11, starts off United's winning attack, and from Rowley's pass, Stan Pearson...
Busby's was an overall vision for how football should be played. He carefully moulded his team, steering them to the 48 Cup final. The players' bonus was restricted to £20. Busby was given a year's salary, £1,750. The manager's job was secured.
All managers get a bit stronger if they're top at league, win something. And that's what you've got to do to keep your job. So we really kept his job for him.
In 1950, Busby's ambitions took United on a playing tour to America. His stars went on display, but their allowance was not enough to live on. Charlie Mitten was approached by a South American club, operating outside international football rules, able to offer big money.
I think it was £5,000 signing on fee, £5,000 a year, £35 a win, half for a draw. As against 8, 12 and 15 and 6 during the summer. Quite a difference, isn't it?
Busby tried to insist Mitten was tied to United.
He said, the first words he said, "Oh, you can't go, son." I said, "Why, boss?" He said, "You're contracted to the club." I said, "You have a look at my contract, it's expired."
Mitten defied Busby. In July 1950, he flew to Colombia. He was a star in Colombia, but when he returned a year later, the FA made an example of him, banning him for 6 months and fining him £250.
It was terrible treatment when you think, isn't it? I mean, I didn't ask them for money. I didn't ask them for anything except my freedom. I said to the boss, I said, "Listen, boss, I'm a better player now than when I went. And I would advise you to sign me." "Sign you," he said, "we're not even going to let you train here. The board have decided that you've got to go for discipline." I said, "The board? Bloody load of crap, the board."
Busby didn't challenge the board. Mitten was banned for 6 months, fined another £250, then sold to Fulham. Throughout his career, Busby would never try to reform the system which had weighed on him as a player. He enforced the rules absolutely.
And years later, I thought to myself, well, other players have crossed Matt, and they've all disappeared from the club.
Busby's manner was gentle, but he had iron will. He was the boss. He believed youth was the key, sending scouts nationwide for the best.
In 1948, and we listened to it on the radio, the FA Cup final, when Man United won the cup. And I think maybe that was the first time when they started talking about Manchester United having a youth policy, the new manager coming in, Sir Matt Busby, and he was giving players a chance.
Busby delegated to Jimmy Murphy the work with the new recruits.
My dad took them from schoolboys and turned them into men. He had the saying that was his little orchard, and when they were ripe, he just passed them on. They were his golden apples. They were his family. He said to Matt, "There's another one ready there, Matt. Put him in the side." And that was as simple as that. And that's what he did. That was my dad's job.
The main factor was they were brought up in the club from basically young boys, schoolboys, school leaving age. And they become part of the club itself. Dedication to the club and trying to get into the team. And this was a very important factor.
In 1953, Busby pitched 7 teenagers into a match at Huddersfield. Bill Foulkes, a recent signing, saw that Busby's daring faith in young players meant the scrap heap for the older men.
Couldn't believe it. And the guys who'd been, the older boys, who'd come from the war and had played, and who had won the FA Cup in 48 and won the championship in 52, and had resurrected the club. Most of them were out, and the 7 youngsters were in. You know, it was incredible. I mean, nobody's ever done that. No manager had ever done that, particularly in those days. From there started what the newspapers called it the Busby Babes. You had to feel sorry for the people who were left out, you know, and great players. I mean, some of them were household names left out, you know. But this is the way Matt, you know, you would say he was ruthless, but at the same time, he was looking after the club. He was doing his job as a football manager. And he had the strength to do it. The Busby Babes exploded, really, you know. They played some fantastic football.
Goes forward it, Matt is back there, tackling them, and there it is! A magnificent goal by Taylor!
Now young McGuinness to Berry, cutting it very nicely. This could be the first goal. It's a goal, a lovely one.
There's Berry getting them going. Berry, number 7 with the ball. Still United on the attack.
Manchester United took football out of post-war austerity into its rock and roll years. Their players were brilliant and impossibly young. The media called them the Busby Babes, but they owed their technique to the unsung Jimmy Murphy.
Jimmy Murphy was the greatest influence I'd ever had on as a football person. He was with me for, he sort of was never off my back for about 3 or 4 years. And if I ever did anything wrong, if it was a bad pass, or a pointless pass, you know, then he would explain it. He would stop me and he would explain it. Really, really physically, you know, I'd give you a little shake, you know, don't do that, because if you do that, you know, you're liable to lose the game, and these things stuck with me. But all that emanated from the old man, Sir Matt. He was the one that told them that he wanted the type of football that he wanted.
Busby was never a tactician, but this sprang from a belief that football was best played naturally. Management was about creating an environment for talented players to express themselves. His team swept to league championships in 1956 and 57.
And there it is! Yes, it's a great goal. It's scored by Coleman.
Sir Matt was the reason for it. He was the one that actually made it all happen. He was the one that created this. With all the success, I think that the way that he handled it, and he handled the club, he made it such a close-knit community, close-knit family.
Goalkeeper Harry Gregg was impressed by United's father figure.
Definitely an iron fist in a velvet glove, but had the face of compassion. He is possibly one of the most powerful people in an hour that I've ever met in my lifetime. He didn't have to talk big, he was big.
John Giles came from Ireland at 15 in the next wave of young talent.
Young players, young footballers, I think have to have an innocence to do what's needed to be done in football. For a young boy, it was a wonderland. Pre-season training, for example, you're training with the older players like Duncan Edwards and Tommy Taylor, Dennis Violet, David Pegg, all these great players. And just to be associated and near those players who were your heroes was great. It was like going to heaven.
These were happy days for Busby. He and Jean were secure, and with their 2 children growing up, they began to enjoy their success, often going to Manchester's first nightclub, the Cromford, owned by former boxer Paddy McGrath.
And Matt used to come in a lot then in those days with his family. I would never let anybody bother him, you know. He'd have a little bet, you know, he played the roulette or something, and when it was legal, and then he would have a game of cards and that, you know.
I felt that we had reached the stage when I could nearly have sat in my office for about 10 years and just went out and saw the match. They had reached that stage of experience, power, skill, and everything else. And there was prizes to be won, many prizes to be won, and I felt that probably they would have done wonderful things for a number of years.
But Busby drove United on, entering the European Cup in 1957, a move strongly opposed by the conservative English League. He could see huge opportunities beyond the domestic game.
He wanted Manchester United to be successful. He wanted to be successful. He loved success. He enjoyed being successful.
But the league's opposition meant that